The sectarians usually quote chapter 66, verse 3, right, as proof that the prophet had other revelations other than the Quran. This is what the mushriks will say. They say the prophet revealed other revelations, was giving other revelations besides the Quran, right? And so they will say, Wahi bigairil matlu. This is what the mushriks will tell you. They will say, Wahi bigairil matlu. That is a wahi which has not been recited to the people, meaning, So this is what the mushriks, many a time you hear them saying, that the prophet revealed other revelations which were not revealed in the Quran, but it has to be implemented. You listen. Now here, the questioner is asking based on Quran chapter 66, verse 3, right? Salam Ashraf. Chapter 66, verse 3, right? They quote this verse, and when they quote it, and then they will say, based on this, this wahi, they will say, based on this, that means the prophet received another wahi, which was not found in the Quran. So that means that is how they got their garbage books. So according to them, all the garbages they have on the side, that is the inspiration that they have. Okay, we are going to examine the verse. First of all, I put the verse on the screen. Chapter 66, verse 3. So he says, and when the prophet confided in one of his wives a discussion. Now, in this context, the discussion is the haditha. So this haditha in this context is a discussion. And when she informed it, God disclosed it to him, to the prophet. So what happens is, and he was acquainted with part of it and avoided parts. So he, the prophet, was acquainted with part of the information and he avoided part of the information. So what happens was, and when he informed her, he informed his wife, the one who went to gossip by taking that information to another wife of his. What happens when he informed her about it? She said, who informed you this? And remember, the context of the verse is talking about the prophet. It is not talking about the messenger. It has nothing to do with us, we the people. So somebody will say, okay, what is it that he told her? What is wrong with you? Must you know what he told her? I don't get it. If God wanted you to know, he will have mentioned it in the Quran. That is, if it is part of the guidance. That is why the subject talks about the prophet. The prophet has his personal life. The way he goes to shower, the way he sleeps with his women, the way he does his personal things. It is personal. But the advice here is, the reason why God is bringing it on the front side for you to understand what happened is because you can disclose something to one of your wives and she might tell somebody of the outside. We have all seen that your wife or your sister or somebody relative might know something of your secret and they can disclose it to another person. And then you get to go around and hear it from somebody that, hey, your brother told me this about you, your sister told me this about you, or your wife told me this about you. It's normal. People do that. So God was bringing this story as a caution, and we are going to see the lesson behind it. So the verse says, she said, who informed you this? He, the prophet, said. Remember, the subject of the verse is based on the prophet. That's the subject. He is the subject of the verse. But the context is denoting something concerning how people cannot be trusted with secret informations, regardless of who they are. They can be your wife or your husband or your brother or your sister. We saw the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. It happens to him with his brothers, right? Okay, so he told his wife, I was informed by the omniscient, the cognizant. Remember, he is a prophet, so he can be informed. Right? And this is why when you check the Quran, you will never see where God is saying Atiwullah wa Atiwul Nabi. Instead, Atiwullah wa Atiwul Rasul. And again, you will never see a verse where God says Laqad kana lakum fi nabiyillah. But instead, fi Rasulullah. It is the messenger you are taking the example from, and it is the messenger you are supposed to obey. His duty as a prophet is only limited with his people and his family. It doesn't extend to you and I. We don't know him as a human being, as a prophet. We have never seen him. And being a prophet is between him and his people at that time, the timeline he is based on. But as a messenger, it extends to our time because we can see his messengership duty in the Quran. So understand this logic I'm giving you. I know the mushriks, they don't understand simple logic. They will be confused. Listen to me. Okay. So now we go to verse 4. Before we go to verse 4, you see these verses. Inside the verse, it doesn't mention the word wahi. Neither does he mention the word tanzil. You don't see the word tanzil and you don't see the word wahi. So how did the mushriks denote that since this happened, that means the prophet was getting revelation? Because if you use the word revelation, that is a flawed argument. Revelation tanzil has to do with the people. Because remember, the message of the Quran is not only limited to the prophet. That is why Quran chapter 2 verse 185 says, Sharu Ramadan allazi unzila fihi al-Quran hudan linnas. Quran chapter 20 verse 2 to verse 3, it says, Ma anzalna alayka al-Quran litashqa illa tazkiratan liman yakhsha. So the Quran is to serve as a guidance for mankind and is to serve as a reminder for those who fear God. So God doesn't bring down a revelation and the prophet will have it secretly or personally to himself. And he says, hey, you guys, the Quran was given to you people, but God gave me another revelation. You have to come and fight each other and get it from me, from my bedroom. Are you nuts? Afalatakilu. So in this verse, we see information. That information is between his household. That is between him and his wives. That information does not need to go out for even a third party to hear it. So look at the professionalism. Look at the infinite wisdom God is going to display with the issue here. So now verse 4. If you repent, is telling the wives, if you repent to God, then the hearts of you both, that is the other one who went to tell the other wife, their hearts is what? Have inclined, meaning inclined to surrender to God and repent. But if you assist each other against him, the prophet, meaning you, the two wives, if you assist each other against him, then indeed God is his guardian, and Gabriel and the righteous believers and the angels would what? Assist after that. That is, after God, all the believers, including the angels, Gabriel, the righteous believers, will assist against you women for trying to tarnish the image of the prophet. Because what happens? If somebody confines a secret to you and you are not given the privilege to extend it outside, what are you doing? You are tarnishing the image of the person, because then you are taking this secret outside and you are tarnishing the image of the person in this issue. So if you repent to God, then the hearts of you both, that is the women, you both, because one took the information to the other. So you both have inclined, but if you assist each other, then what? God, indeed God is his guardian, and then what? Gabriel, and then the righteous believers and the angels will assist after that, after God. Okay, so now these two verses I just read, we can see that the word haditha was mentioned, but that haditha is meant to be between him and his wives. It doesn't have to be extended outside. But if it is a good thing to do, why is God telling the wives to repent? Hello, listen to me carefully. Give me your listening ears. If even the issue of hadith is allowed, how come God is telling the wives to repent? The prophet disclosed a hadith, which is a narration or a discussion, to one of his wives. And then she passed behind him to tell another wife. Just like the mushriks today, the books of hadith they have, they keep saying, we heard it from so and so. We heard it from so and so. We heard the wife of the prophet telling us the prophet used to do so and so. Even his bedroom issues, these hadith mushriks, they even have it. How can you have it? If his wives, he has confided in one of them, and God is telling both of them, the one who went to tell the other to repent And you, the foolish mushriks of today, are telling me, you, the hadiths you have, and you are calling the isnad, the mutawatir or whatever, saying, oh, this one heard from this. And then out of the stupidity, they will say, Nana Aisha told them that the prophet used to sit like this, used to jump like this, used to stand like this. Hey! And God is telling you in this verse, is telling the wives to repent from just telling each other. They didn't even take the information outside. Check the verse. Quran chapter 66, verse 3 to verse 4. The wife didn't take the information outside. She only went to tell another wife of his. And God is telling them to repent. And you, the mushriks, are telling us you have the hadith of the prophet, even to the extent how he sleep with his wives. Ha! Hello? And then based on this verse, you are going to tell us that there is a wahi. Do you see the word wahi in this verse? Do you see the word tanzil in the verse? What is wrong with your logic? Simple Arabic, they don't know. If God says Rasul, they will say Nabi. If God says Atiullah, they will say follow. They don't know Arabic even. And you claim with all the Jamia you have went to the universities of whatever, Azhar and whatever, you are struggling to understand the simple, clear book, Quran. Chapter 33, verse 53. In contrast to chapter 66, right? Chapter 33, verse 53. In that verse, this is the verse. In the verse, this is what it says. It's talking to the believers in the timeline of the prophet, when the prophet was alive. This verse, right? Is in the timeline of the prophet. So, so chapter 33, verse 53. Here, Ya ayyuhallazina amanu la tadkhulu buyutan nabiyyi illa an yu'zana lakum ila ta'am. So unless if you have been given permission to come and eat, to come and eat for food. Then he says what? Gaira nazirin, without waiting. So you have to wait. Nazir, when you say intazar, like to wait. So nazirin. Innahu walakin iza du'itum, if you are invited. So you are not supposed to what? Come or enter his houses unless if you are invited to come and eat, and you have to wait. Without waiting, you cannot come. So when you are invited, you come. So then it says, walakin iza du'itum, when you are invited, you come. Then it says what? Fadkhulu, then if you are invited, then enter. So you are invited, you enter. Fa'iza ta'imtum, and when you have eaten, then he says what? Fantashiru, then you have to disperse. Just like in Surah Al-Jum'ah, it says, Fariza qudiyatu salat, fantashiru fil ard. So fantashiru meaning disperse. You have to leave, go your way. Then he says what? Wala mustahnisina li hadith. Wala mustahnisina li hadith. So this is the verse here. O you who believe, do not enter the houses of the prophet unless you have permission for a meal, without waiting, impatient, unless when you are invited, then enter. And when you have eaten, then what? Disperse. That is, leave. And when you leave, and do not socialize for discussion. You do not have to socialize, to be sociable, to socialize yourself in his house for discussion. Just like the hadith books will keep telling you that people who go to the house of the prophet, and they will just go and then they will see Aisha resting on the legs of the prophet, and then they will go and say, prophet, this man I saw in the jungle is doing this. What should we do to him? Then the prophet will say, wait, I'm waiting for a verse. When it comes, go and arrest him. This is what they do. Okay. Now God is telling the believers at that time, do not socialize for hadith. So in case there is something called hadith, God is now telling you, do not socialite for hadith. The same type of discussion, he confided in one of his wives, and she went to tell another wife, and she was warned, and they were told to repent. Meaning, since they repent, they don't have to do the same thing by trying to propagate the information the prophet gave, which has nothing to do with the guidance of God. And again, when the believers go to his house, they do not also have to sit in the house and try to have discussions with him. No, forbidden by God. So then God says, indeed, that is offending the prophet. You are foolishly having garbage books and telling us the prophet gave you the authority. Come and show us where it says on the authority of the prophet. Open one of your garbage books and tell me where prophet says on the authority of the prophet, I gave you this particular hadith that write this. You don't have it. So now God is now telling you, the mushriks, that has been offending the prophet, even though believers are the ones going to his house. But when they try to have discussions with him, it offends him. He just wants you to come and sit and eat and go your house. Don't come and waste time with Sahih Bukhari and your garbage books. That is offending the prophet. And he is ashamed of you. But God is not ashamed. You know, God will tell you the truth, right? So God is not ashamed of you, the truth. And when you ask them for something, so this verse here, it says, Sa'altumuhunna, it's talking about the wives. If you come to the prophet's house and you want to ask his wives for something, this is what God, the criteria God gave. You want to ask them for something, then ask them behind a partition, behind a hijab. Right? Does that mean the men have to also wear hijab? Because the mushriks, whenever they see hijab, they say, oh, you have to cover, the woman has to cover her head. So is it the man who has to wear hijab? Because God says the man has to ask the women behind the hijab. It is just a partition, right? That is purer for your hearts and their hearts. So it's purer for you, the men, at that time of the prophet. It's purer for you and purer for the women, so that there will not be, attraction of something there. And it is not for you to offend the messenger of God, nor to marry his wives after him, ever. So even if the prophet is dead, the messenger is dead, is no more, you are not supposed to marry his wives, right? And God says, indeed, that will be terrible in front of God to do. Right? Because then when you go and marry one of his wives, you take his secrets. You know every secret about him. And that is problematic. So if God doesn't give you the chance to even know any secret about the prophet, apart from what you find in the Quran, how can you foolishly say you have hadith books, and yet we don't see the authority from the prophet that you should write those garbage books? And you are coming to tell us why he became matlu. Keep fooling yourselves. Again, when they quote such a verse, they are trying to prove that a revelation was given to the prophet other than the Quran. So let's go and ask the Quran the question. Quran chapter 17, verse 73. Right? Quran chapter 17, verse 73. Is that the case? Was something else given to the prophet to give to us other than the Quran? So this verse I'm going to quote, it simplifies, it seals the argument for the mushriks, right? They cannot argue with you anymore. Any mushrik who tell you a wahi was given to the prophet for the people other than the Quran, just quote this verse I'm going to give you. Chapter 17, verse 73. You will seal the argument once and for all, right? Here. So Quran chapter 17, verse 73. Listen what God says. وَإِن كَادُوا لَيَفْتِنُونَكَ عَنِ الَّذِي أَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْكَ لِتَفْتَرِيَ عَلَيْنَا غَيْرَهُ وَإِذًا لَا تَخَذُوكَ خَلِيلًا. Do you see? So this is what the verse says. And although they almost will have enticed you away from what we inspired to you, Muhammad alayhi salam, that you might fabricate other than it. So other than it here, the gairahu is a dhamir, is a pronoun. The pronoun is a masculine pronoun denoting the Quran, the book. The gairahu mentioned in Quran chapter 17, verse 73. The gairahu is a singular pronoun. It's not Two. If it is two things, God will have said gairahuma, meaning two things or two revelations. So God says, although they almost will have enticed you, the prophet, away from what we inspired to you. Because Quran chapter 6 verse 19, the prophet, the messenger, he says, وَأُوهِيَ إِلَيَّ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ لِأُنذِرَكُمْ بِهِ وَمَنْ بَلَغَ. And that this Quran has been inspired to me in order to warn you by it and whomever it may reach. Quran chapter 6 verse 19. So Quran chapter 17 verse 73. God is now saying, and although they almost will have enticed you away from what we inspired to you, Muhammad, that you might fabricate. They want you to fabricate something else, right? Other than it. God didn't say other than the two. He didn't say gairahuma. He says gairahu, which is a masculine pronoun denoting the Quran, the book. So other than it, about us, because the Quran is there to tell you about God. That's why he says, Amana billahi wa malaikatihi wa kutubihi wa rusulihi. That's why he is at the end. Do you understand? The Quran is there to give you guidance to God, not guidance to anybody. You'll be a fool to think the Quran is here to guide you to the sunnah of somebody. Sunnah of God, sunnatullah. That's why the Quran is here. Why are you fooling yourselves? So God says, and in that case, they will have taken you as a friend. So this is what they wanted Prophet Muhammad to do. And that is why the mushriks are still insisting there is a wahi bigairil matlu. Look at the foolishness again. Quran is speaking to you clearly here, telling you it was only one revelation he was given to give to the people. You, out of your foolishness, you say he has two revelations. Who should we believe? Your garbage books or the book of guidance? Me, babashuaib, I cannot tolerate your garbage books. I have the book of guidance, Ahsan al-Hadith, the best hadith, the Quran. Quran chapter 39, verse 23. This is sufficient for me. Why will I waste my time going to garbages? So, ladies and gentlemen, any mushrik who tells you there is wahi bigair al-matlu, just quote chapter 17, verse 73. How come God is saying there is only one? They will say, hey, but chapter 66, verse 3, it shows that there's inspiration. The word wahi, was it mentioned in 66, verse 3? Okay, the word tanzil, revelation, was it mentioned in chapter 66, verse 3? So why will you fool yourself? And I just proved to you from the Quran that God doesn't even give the chance for anybody to transmit hadith. He didn't give his wives the chance to transmit hadith. And you foolishly think he will give you, the mushriks, the chance to transmit hadith? He didn't even give the believers who saw the prophet with their eyes the chance to discuss, to have a discussion with him or to his wives. And you think these honorable wives will come and tell you stupid people, I used to sleep with the prophet. He will sleep with me even if I'm on my menses. If not the enemies of God and his prophet, will you allow these garbage books to be circulating in the world? Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakil. So Quran chapter 10 verse 15. This is what the prophet, the messenger, his people did to him, right? He says, وَإِذَا تُتُلَى عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُنَا بَيِّنَاتٍ قَالَ الَّذِينَ لَا يَرْجُونَ لِقَاءَنَا آتِ بِقُرْآنٍ غَيْرِ هَذَا أَوْ بَدِّلْهُ قُلْ مَا يَكُونُ لِي أَنْ أُبَدِّلَهُ مِنْ تِلْقَاءِ النَّفْسِ إِنْ أَتَّبِعُ إِلَّا مَا يُوحَى إِلَيَّ رَبِّي. Then he says, إِلَيَّ رَبِّي. Then he says, Inni akhafu in asaitu Rabbi azaba yawmin azim. So he says, and when our verses are recited to them as proofs, the mushriks, they are listening, right? Now listen what happens, what they do. Then those who do not hope to meet us, they say what? Bring a Quran, bring a reading, a Quran, other than haza, this. Now when we say this, we are talking about THIS, meaning Prophet Muhammad was giving only one Quran. There are no different versions, only one version and one Quran. Not two, not three, not four, not five, not six, not seven, as the foolish mushriks keep telling you. It was given one. So even the disbelievers at his time, when the Quran is being read to them or recited to them, they will say the prophet should bring a Quran other than what he has. Then the prophet is going to answer the question. Or they tell him to change it, meaning change what you have, bring something else. Because they want to take him as a friend. So they want the inspiration God to gave him. They want him to change it, to bring something different. As I quoted chapter 17, verse 73. Do you understand? So chapter 17, verse 73 is in contrast to Quran chapter 10, verse 15. So what happens is, then the messenger was asked to tell these people, it is not for me to change it spontaneously by myself. He cannot do that because the Quran doesn't belong to the prophet. Quran belongs to mankind and it comes from God. That is why Quran chapter 10 verse 37, it says, وَمَا كَانَ هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ أَنْ يُفْتَرَى مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ وَلَكِنْ تَصْدِيقَ الَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ وَتَفْصِيلَ الْكِتَابِ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ مِنْ رَبِّ الْعَالَمِينَ. It is not for this Quran to be invented by other than God. Right? However, it is a confirmation of what was before it and an elaboration of the Al-Kitab. There is no doubt therein from the Lord of the worlds. This is what the Quran represents. Right? Okay, so this same Quran, they are expecting the prophets to invent something, to change something, to fabricate something. That is why God says, Gairahu, because he gave him one Quran, one version, and no other revelation to be given to the people. Any other revelation you think the prophet has is personal. If it's personal, we don't say it is for the people. You'll be a fool to go and spy on the prophet, to take a news which is not meant for the people. Afala takilun. That is why God says, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ, and he never made a mistake to say, فِي نَبِيِّ اللَّهِ. What do you need from the prophet? He is dead and gone. You need the Rasul and the Risala. That is God. That's why he says, أَتِوُ اللَّهَ وَأَتِوُ Rasul. Why are you mushriks letting us sweat like that? Huh? I only follow what is inspired to me. This is what the Rasul said. I only follow what is inspired to me. And the inspiration is the Quran. Any other inspiration you think he might have is personal. If it's personal, it's not for the people. You'll be a fool to think a personal inspiration has to do with the people. Then he says, indeed, I fear the punishment of a very terrible day if I should disobey what my Lord. Do you understand? So this is the evidence. So anytime people are trying to quote verses and tell you, hey, this, you knew, the prophet was giving revelation, just ask him a simple question. Open the Quran. Show me where God says he was giving a revelation other than the Quran. Simple. Just ask them it's a simple logical question. Just tell them, show me where God says, I gave the prophet a revelation other than the Quran. Remember, the word revelation means tanzil. The word wahi means inspiration. The word ruhu means spirit. Understand the meanings of these words. Mushriks would twist them and play with your conscience. babashuaib, the correctional officer, is here to help you out.